What is the soul? How does it connect with the universe around us? These are eternal questions that have intrigued humanity throughout the centuries. In her groundbreaking work, The Emanation Body, Julia Seton takes us on a fascinating journey into understanding our deepest essence and its connection to the cosmos. In this transformative book, Seton invites us to explore the concept of the emanated body, an idea that challenges conventions and immerses us in an ocean of spiritual wisdom. Through captivating and insightful prose, she introduces us to a world where matter and spirit intertwine in mysterious and wonderful ways. As we open the chapters of the Emanation Body, we find ourselves immersed in a journey of self-exploration and inner discovery. Seton expertly guides us through philosophical and esoteric concepts, revealing how our inner energies intertwine with cosmic forces to shape our reality. As we delve deeper into Seton's teachings, we discover how we can cultivate greater harmony with the universe around us, how we can align our energies to reach our fullest potential, and how we can find meaning in every aspect of our lives. The Emanation Body is not just a book, it is a beacon of light on the path to spiritual understanding and expanding consciousness. It is an invitation to explore the mysteries of the soul and embrace the infinite beauty of the universe. Whether you are a seeker of spiritual truth or simply curious about the mystery of existence, the Emanation Body will take you on an unforgettable journey through the chapters to the depth of your being and beyond. Get ready to be inspired, challenged, and transformed by the brilliance of Julia Seton and her masterpiece, The Emanation Body.
The Emanation Body by Julia Seton. Introduction. There are some things so true that no amount of proof can make them more true, yet to those who do not follow the higher forms of thinking, it becomes impossible to explain or verify them. But in spite of the skeptical mind and the scoff of the scorner, the old things must pass away and new things, born from new ideas, must come forth. These are the days of new thoughts, new statements and new actions, and all these new things rest upon the deeper intellectual and spiritual insight of the race. The first really new freedom of thought was directed toward the material universe, seeking a fuller and more harmonious self-expression in form. The old civilization consciousness passed through the revelation of matter, then on to mind, while the new civilization of today is passing back again through labyrinths of mind to astounding discoveries in matter. The first really new discovery in mind was directed toward a finer understanding of the physical body, and strange new psychological relationships of health and disease were discovered. Following the trail of mind back into matter, men came upon the atomic mind of the flesh and found the body, instead of a solid lump of non-intelligent matter, to be a very solar center of vibrant intelligence as well as a mighty dynamo of pulsing power. Then, following this clue still farther, they unveiled the mystical system of reproduction, regeneration and transmutation of the flesh itself, and understood it, not from the level of a so-called disordered reasoning, but through the true action and reaction of life's finer forces. In order to come into a complete understanding of these higher laws, almost every old theory about the body must be retranslated. If this emanation story is the true law of the flesh, then all that science has had to say in the past regarding the body must be reinterpreted and rearranged. Chapter 1. What is the emanation body? The emanation body is a flesh body emanated from the body itself, built from the substance within the cells of the flesh, not entirely independent of normal food, yet growing independently, and in spite of the absence of normal food products, sustained by the power within itself, reproducing new tissues from its own center and substance. The emanation body has power within itself to carry out all needed functions, and food is used only as fuel. The body really produces itself through psychic emanation. It throws out from its cells that which has become waste products to the cell itself, yet is a living substance for the creation of new cells. Every cell of the body is intelligence and lives within its own orbit of function. It is reproduced from itself. A bone cell could not evolve a brain cell, neither could a tissue cell emanate the substance of the bone cell. All cells of the body have a nucleus, and some more than one. These nuclei are the open doorway of the storehouse of the cell, and in the cell itself rests the substance through which it is perpetuated. Secreted in its own heart, it simply awaits the touch of the right magnet to release its substance. It bursts to pressure just as a flower crushed in warm hands releases its odor, or a boiling substance gives off steam. It is this substance bursting from the cells themselves, which really sustains the body, and the initiate who understands his own body can consciously operate the emanative law. He can force his cells, through higher control, far beyond so-called normal functions, where they will respond to a finer law of release, and give forth this substance independent of the methods which the ordinary individual considers necessary. Living then from his own spiritual storehouse, he transcends all the laws of the ordinary flesh, and he builds for himself a new flesh body infinitely beyond the reach of the laws of the crude human flesh. Mortality has here and now put on immortality. This body knows nothing of weariness, age, decay, or death. It is one with that which is eternal. Chapter 2. What is the food body? The food body is that flesh body which is dependent, for its life, upon the substance and stimulation of food. It is that reserve quantity of cellular tissue in the body which nature keeps on hand, from which to order its magnetic plugs for use in the emanation body. There must always be a residual food body, just as there must be a residual breath supply, something to be called upon in emergencies. The normal food body is recognized as a thin cellular ensheathment of all parts of the tissue body. It is always changing, increasing or decreasing, and the accumulation or loss of this residual tissue is what makes the gain or loss of weight. Nature never intended anyone to be too heavy or too light. One should weigh according to his height and bony structure. It is a false idea that the food body should increase with years. It is the abnormal increase of this body, or abnormal decrease, that makes old age. All disease, old age, and even death itself, is in the food body. A huge, purple, under-aerated food body is as dangerous to health as an ignited dynamite stick. It must explode somewhere, it always does, and acute, chronic and subchronic diseases are its trophies. The food body must be kept out of the way, for life, youth, health and freedom, and it can only be kept out of the way through understanding. All food, cell flesh, is soft flesh. All so-called heart trouble is from overaccumulation of soft food tissues. Too many food cells in the kidneys produce nephritis. Food cells are everywhere through the whole body. They appear in fatty and soft tissues. All calculi, of whatever kind, are simply food cells acted upon, and changed by the secretions they contact. Every particle of food taken into the body must be eliminated, and thrown out through the functions of the body itself. If this is not accomplished, it is thrown back into the blood current, and lodged wherever it can find room in the system. All uric acid is simply decomposed food cells passing through the circulation as poison. Uremia and uremic coma is oversaturation with the poison of effete matter which should have been eliminated through the urinal system. The food body is at once our savior and our destroyer, and in order to fully understand our own mechanism, we must turn our attention now to the question of food itself. Chapter 3. The Real Value of Food. The first great lesson that the new civilization, must learn is that every mouthful of food taken into the body must be thrown out of the body again. When this is not done, disease of the body, languor of the mind and inertia of consciousness follow. The biggest obsession in the race mind, past and present, is that we live by what we eat. We do not. We live or die by just what the food we eat accomplishes in the psychical machinery of our flesh body. We can eat and die, thousands do this daily. We can not eat, grow fat and live. Thousands are learning this new dietary. The physical body is a wonderful laboratory. The food taken into the stomach is separated into its component parts by the action of the cell intelligence within us, then it is sent on its journey of nutrition. The coarser parts of the food are all eliminated through the intestinal tract. When this is not done, the history of bowel trouble tells the story. Constipation, the fountain syringe, cathartic pills, gastro. Intestinal indigestion, colon lavage all bear witness to man's stupidity. The many appendixless creatures everywhere are symbols of this lack of elimination, coupled with the skill of modern surgery. Finer particles of food are eliminated through the kidneys, saliva, and skin. Consider for a moment the world's history of kidney trouble, Bright's disease, renal calculi, gallstones, gout, rheumatism, all glowing tributes to man's lack of understanding in nature's inflexible laws. Nature says, get rid of all you have taken in or it will kill you. It has served its purpose, you keep it at your own risk. All the finer particles of food are dissolved and carried away through the breath as carbon dioxide gas. Tuberculosis, arteriosclerosis and uric acid troubles are the trophies of those who keep in their blood current the poisonous gases whose use has been exhausted and which should have been expelled. The foodstuff taken in by the mouth is much too coarse to serve the body's purpose of nutrition. Without reorganization in the body itself, it is as far from the possibility of use as the crude drug is distant from the thousandth homeopath triturate. All the food substance is separated into particles, which act in the system as electric plugs, and these, carried through the body by the circulation of the blood, find the center of the nuclei of the cells in every tissue, and through pressure, vibration, the cell bursts to its own magnet, and releases a substance which instantly becomes its nutrition. The tissues of the body are all true, certain and constant in the cell response to their own magnets. A magnet meant for the liver cell would never open a brain cell, a bone magnet goes directly to its own. Order is God's first law, and nature is God in divine organization. Each cell calls for and receives its own stimuli, and when it has had a complete mutual contact the used substance passes on into the eliminatory tract to which it belongs, and should be then thrown out of the body. It will never be used again by the old cell. A new magnet will be needed for the next release, and when it is needed the cell hunger establishes the call and there are new magnets ready, and waiting in the food body to answer the invitation of the emanation cells. When the waste is not thrown out, the body and all its tissues become poisoned. There is no more deadly poison known than ptomaine poisoning, and these dead cells are virtually ptomaine circulating, their deadly fumes through the system. Take a look at the flesh bodies of half the young world, and at 9/10 of all who are over 40, and written everywhere on face and form is nature's command, unload, you are killing yourself. Food, diet, digestion, nutrition, this has formed the old world's eternal obsession, and out of this they built food bodies, incompetent and abnormal, strangling the true life of the emanative cell. Overstimulation of food magnets on the nuclei of the cells causes an excess of substance to be released, and this causes a false proliferation of food cells, and like granulated tissue in an abnormal surgical wound, it in time overruns the normal cell production, and after a while destroys it altogether. All excess flesh and all sub-flesh is disease, and shows that the tissues have lost their normal balance between food cells and the permanent atomic emanative intelligence. A thin coating of food cells is a part of nature's plan, but not an undergrowth or an overgrowth. Some people are so thin that half of their cells never receive stimulation enough to fully release their substance. These cannot put on or take off a pound of flesh. Their food is never separated into its component parts, but is passed off at once as waste. The infantile disease called marasmus is a typical picture of static cells. The emanation quality is inert. The cells do not respond to the food stimulation, because the food is not separated into its true vibration. Often a gentle electrolysis, magnetic massage or mental treatment with magnet massage will do more than all kinds of foods or medicines to awaken the normal action of the emanation cell. Man made his first appearance on this earth independent of all food save that which was emanated from his own blood current in conjunction with the maternal circulation. He will make his exit in full possession of this law, and nutrition will be a concerted action of his own cell intelligence with the higher universal intelligence or circulation called breath. Chapter 4: Fasting and Breathing. The emanative law of the flesh is not an occult, mysterious, metaphysical something to be attained only by a few, but it is the divine possession of every living soul. It is not a question of attaining emanation, it is only a question of realizing it and being it. Emanation began when life began. It was, is, and ever shall be, and the only really vital question is how one shall keep the normal emanative activity and hold the true normal balance between the emanative body and the food body. And again an important question, how shall this balance be restored once it is lost? Or how shall it be accentuated when it is dull or inert? The answer to these questions is easy, and the process of balancing it is easy. But the race man will not make it easy for himself for many years to come, because it means conscious mental action and self-control, neither of which are at the present time the gift of the ordinary individual. There are two important things involved in the operation of the law of emanation. The first one of these is the breath. The emanation body is an air body. All its action and reaction is based upon the intake and outlet of breath. It is the breath of the Almighty that giveth us life. The emanation body functions through air. The food body functions through food magnets. The more one eats, the less he breathes, and the heavier his food body becomes, and the heavier it is, the more it shuts out the life of the air cell and destroys its activity. With this lessening action there is less call for the oxygen of the air. The less air and activity, the more there is accumulation of waste products in the body. Inert respiratory action means non-elimination of carbon dioxide gas, finer waste products of the body. When this gas is not eliminated, it must be stored up somewhere, so it is turned back into the circulation, and is carried in the blood through the tissues. The under-aerated flesh of the ordinary person tells the story. There are many who would be surprised to be told that their disease was only slow asphyxiation from the poisonous gases of their own flesh. Breath has its first importance in elimination, its second importance is nutrition. The breath eliminates the finer waste of the body, and with this channel interrupted, the whole scheme of the flesh body must go wrong. Normally, one should inhale and exhale a given number of times in a minute. There is always a passing breath from without in and within out, while a normal amount of air remains in the lungs, keeping them inflated. Until the psychologists came into the scientific field, little attention was given to the residual air in the lungs. All attention was centered round inhalation and exhalation, but higher revelation regarding all functions of the body revealed the fact that the residual air in the lungs often becomes a stagnant pool of gas, breeding inharmony in every atom of the body. The scientist swung his attention around the elimination through the kidneys and bowels, but has been forced to give way to the story of emanation through increased respiration. As a trophy for the stagnant residual air in the lungs, nature gave the individual the fetid breath, decayed teeth, pyorrhea of the gums, biliousness, and many other pet diseases which never yielded to the old ideas of treatment. The fake breathing teachers found that they could do more for a patient with a few lessons in deep breathing than the wisest medico had ever done, and it was proved that the residual air of the lungs had to be thoroughly changed, or it brought on a sort of hypnosis over the emanative cells and a poisonous gas through the tissues of the food body. Breathing was always one of the chief studies of the ancients. In the olden schools of mysteries there were departments called the Temple of the Seven Spheres, presided over by the ancient Chaldean priests, where renovation of bodies was a constant operation. Renovation meant simply the casting off of the abnormal food body, and through scientific breathing, eating and not eating, again establishing a normal equilibrium of the flesh. Life was even restored to the so-called dead, and the regeneration of the aged to absolute youth was possible. In these temples the priests lived 1,000 years. These ancients were past masters in the art of emanation, which has been lost through the centuries and is just now dimly working its way to the surface of the recollecting mind. These priests built their bodies to last from one civilization to another. It was simply an instrument for use. These were the wise men of the East, who took gifts to the Christ child. The breath is the instrument used for the circulation of the blood. Science says the blood moves through the body because of the force from behind. Revelation says this force from behind is the breath. The lungs, with their muscles of respiration, and the diaphragm are the instrument for its use. The diaphragm is the principal muscle of respiration, because upon its normal descent and ascent depends the suction power in the central part of the body, and without this blood would have no propelling power save the contraction of the muscles, vessels, and heart walls, which nature never intended to be overworked. Long, deep physical breaths lower and raise the diaphragm. Strong inhalation and exhalation empty the lungs of all but the residual air, and allows them to fill again with clean, fresh oxygenated air. These breaths can be prolonged until nearly all the moving residual air can be sent out. The lung cells quickly make the exchange of carbon dioxide gas for oxygen, and this oxygen, carried through the tissues in the bloodstream, burns up quickly, like a flame, the old, worn-out materials of the body. Deep breathing cures constipation, because of the increased peristaltic action. It increases the flow of urine through increased blood pressure. The renal system responds to the changes of blood pressure as the aspen leaf answers the wind. Deep breathing clears the skin. A marked percentage of breath comes through the skin. Cover the human body with an impenetrable substance, and asphyxiation is certain. Long, deep, conscious breaths in regular inhalation and exhalation aerates the bloodstream and the tissues. 25% increase of oxygen in the bloodstream will burn up all waste material, and leave it like white ashes to be carried away, through the eliminatory channels. The secret of old age is carbonization. The secret of youth is oxygenation. The ancient secret of renovation is no longer a secret. The body that is oxygenized at all times cannot grow old nor decay. A body composed largely of life cells, with its normal insulation of food cells, perfectly aerated, cannot die. It is only misdirected life energy that kills. Fasting. The second important method for renovation is fasting. Fasting has been the comrade of breath since reason, and enlightenment led the steps of the uninitiated. Feasting is death and fasting is immortality. From whence, then, did this obsession of food and the necessity of eating fasten itself upon the race mind? The answer is plain. Man must eat, because in the food flesh he is only a higher animal, and he must sustain himself in the only way he knows how. The very fact of the presence in our anatomy, of the organ called the stomach establishes, the fact that it must have a function, and that function is to receive food, but not food as the race man thinks today, not a receptacle stuffed to dilatation, but just filled with food enough to meet the requirements for fuel in this mighty engine of flesh and blood. The lungs furnish the igniting substance, viz. breath. The stomach furnishes that which is to ignite, the food. The intelligence of the cell calls for their magnetic point on which to burst their substance. The stomach is a receptacle for the substance, from which these magnets are secured. The tissues build a certain amount of these magnets into a food body, thus acting as a storehouse for future calls. The food body has to be ready to answer the faintest call of the life cell for magnetization. It is obliged to keep enough stored up to answer, any moment, the demand for new material. The fine cells of the brain demand a perfectly prepared magnet, and nothing can be sent from the food body, which they will use unless it is substance fine enough to answer their need. The stomach is now, and always was, the furnace into which all kinds of food went as fuel, and the master intelligence of the cells divided it into its own chemical affinities, and deposited it in the food body for future use. We must remember that all living matter contains oxygen, nitrogen, sulfur, chlorine, fluorine, iodine, phosphorus, silicon, carbon, potassium, sodium, calcium and manganese of iron, and that all these things are necessary to the life of the organism. It can be seen that they must be secured by some normal process, or the disintegration of the flesh body is certain. In the living cell, the smallest particle of matter is arranged in such a manner that the phenomena of life is possible. It has been proven beyond question that all the constituents of the living cell must in some way be established in the body, or normal action and reaction must be interrupted. There are only two ways of dissemination known, and these are through the food and breath, and it follows at once that, unless an individual knows how to supplement his own protoplasmic law by the substance released by the breath, it must be accomplished through the agency of the food cells. The energy for muscular work and the heat of the body comes from the destruction in the body of the carbohydrate foods. This is the cheapest and easiest source of all foods, and forms the chief bulk of the mass of man's diet. The fats and oils are mostly carbohydrates. These do not contain nitrogen, and cannot be used in building up new, or in repairing old tissues. A prolonged carbohydrate diet causes the system to lose its nitrogen polarity and become a non-nitrogenous body, because the magnet plugs of nitrogen have become extinct, and there is no magnet on which the nitrogen cell can burst its substance. The fact that some vegetables contain nitrogen is of no consequence. It is not what we eat, it is what can be used and is used in the scheme of nutrition. A prolonged carbohydrate diet causes the system to lose its nitrogen polarity and become a non-nitrogenous flesh body. This nitrogen starvation gives rise to the peculiar pallor, so often seen in those who are ignorantly reforming the diet. Carbohydrates alone cannot sustain life. The body gradually withers away and slow starvation of the nitrogen cells ensue. Dr. George Carey says, "The human body is a receptacle for a storage battery, and will always run right while the chemicals are present in proper quantity and combination. Disease is a deficiency in some of the chemical constituents that carry on the chemistry of life. The proper method of cure is to supply the blood with that which is lacking. And this supply which is needed is the stimulating magnet, which is extracted from the food by the intelligence of the body. The difference in the essential use of carbohydrates and protein food is that, while carbohydrates form a source of heat and energy, protein foods supply the material from which the magnets are drawn with which to make new tissues, and to repair the old. It is an unchanging law of animate cells that life is dependent upon for the presence of nitrogen in the system, and without it all conditions on Earth could not combine to create or sustain new normal protoplasm, and the protein magnet is demanded by certain cells of the body in order to release its nitrogenous substance. When we remember that nitrogen forms 79% per volume of the atmospheric air, it is not hard to believe that, with correct instructions and breathing, we may train ourselves to live without any unnecessary amount of food. If we prefer to absorb part or all of our substance through the lungs, no one shall tell us we must receive it through the stomach. The same law will not answer for all mankind. We are all in different stages of unfoldment, and the intensely nitrogenous individual, made so through overstimulation of proteid diet, is no more important in the plan of evolution than is his less nitrogenous breathing brother. Dr. Carey again says, in this strenuous age of reconstruction, while God's creative compounds are forming a new race in the morning of a new age, all who desire physical regeneration should strive, by every means within their reach, to build new tissues, nerve fluids, and brain cells. In this new age we will need perfect bodies to correspond with higher vibrations. When we attempt to establish the law of emanation, we cease eating and unload the waste of the body until the life cells have called for, and have used up every available food magnet in the body. Then there is a great call from the body, hunger, and enough new food is eaten to satisfy this hunger, and the blood current brings the waiting cells a fresh magnet, unsaturated by carbon dioxide gas, fresh, pure, oxygenated, ready to give an intensified contact, to which every life cell in the body is able to respond, and a new body is built from this purified substance. Fasting, with breathing, has always been a direct method of purification, and in order to hurry the renovation processes, the ancient used to bleed the patient to unconsciousness, knowing that the bloodstream carried the stagnant gases of the system. Breath brought new air. Air unites with the mineral magnets in the body and forms new blood. Fasting simply allows the excess food cells to disintegrate, and the blood being a tissue, the food cells of the blood also become destroyed, and with breath enough to fill the whole area of circulation with oxygen, the old tissues are burned out and carried away. Breathing and fasting. These two forms are the two ends of the pole of immortality of the flesh. Breathing until the whole body is clean and pure like a clear pool troubled with the very winds of heaven, fasting until every particle of waste material is cast out, and the body is evolving daily with the finer substance of its own secretions. Then eating sanely, sensibly, not one thing, but of everything, not as a luxury, but only as a necessity. Eating for fuel, not for feeds, and the secret of immortality in a body of youth, strength, and beauty is revealed. Emanation flesh is white, roseate, firm, and always young. The food flesh is dark, dull, heavy, with purple shadows in the lips, often yellow, sallow, flabby, wrinkled or puffed, and over it there comes creeping daily more, and more plainly the traces of age and decay. In the emanation body man sees God in his flesh, and he makes good the statement of the ancients, that as he was born the image of the earthy, he may also bear the image of the heavenly. Chapter 5. Rules for Fasting. The rules for fasting are very simple, just stop eating. Eat one meal every other day for a period of 10 days, then eat 2 meals a day, night and morning. There is no one in the world who needs 3 meals a day. This fast for 10 days, 1 meal every other day, should be taken once a month for 3 months. At the end of 3 months, eat just as your appetite dictates for 3 months, then take up the emanation fast again for 3 months. This method will prevent the abnormal overloading of the body, and keep the emanation law uppermost. During the fast, the one meal taken every other day should be taken at noon. At this meal a mixed diet should be selected. Eat a little of everything and drink all the water you want, and with the meal, if desired. Eat slowly and Fletcherize the food. Any discomfort after eating indicates that the food has been eaten too hastily. During the whole fasting period, plenty of fresh water must be taken, and at all times during the fast breathe, exercise, walk, dance, swim, climb mountains, ride horseback, do something. The only direct road to death is inaction. Keep the body moving. The flesh that is moved must eliminate. There is only one cause for disease congestion, only one cure circulation, and without breath and action, circulation is impossible. It is never a question of what to eat at the faster's one meal a day, eat of whatever is desired, it is only important that it shall not be a single diet. Pass in selection the whole orbit of diet. Nature says, "All that my Father hath is mine, give to me." A diet containing a liberal mixture of all the ordinary foodstuffs is the normal one, pandering, of course, now and then, to individual likes and preferences. When the appetite has become abnormal, it should be forced to obey the will. Usually what one thinks will kill him, will cure him. The normal stomach will accept any sort of food. If the stomach objects to anything, fast until hunger makes even the most obnoxious thing look good, then it need not be eaten. Choose some good, self-satisfying food, but the work of reconstruction is done when one has come to where he can eat of anything. Dyspepsia is an obsession brought into the intelligence of the flesh by a disordered mind. Fasting along the lines laid down is a permanent cure. Why do we eat one meal every other day? Because by this method we keep up the normal action of the gastrointestinal tract, while we give a chance for the destruction of all the effete matter in the blood current without disturbing the blood corpuscles in their normal action. A long fast depletes the cells themselves, but this meal every other day sustains them in a stimulation which keeps them up to normal throughout the whole 10 days of elimination, never affecting the nuclei of the cell. At the end of 10 days one can begin to eat as he pleases without gastrointestinal distress, and at no time does he have a long building up process. The life cells are emanating and building a new body all the while the old tissues are being torn away, and at the end of a year, with interrupted fasts, he can find himself living, moving in a body of flesh made entirely of emanation substance, with a perfectly normal ensheathment of food cells. Through this body he comes into possession of the transcendental powers of the flesh, and stands out as a symbol of human intelligence, with will enough to set for himself a superhuman law, and through this higher understanding he brings to the world the revelations of his new kingdom of consciousness. He has conquered weariness, he has conquered disease, conquered age, and is Lord of every action of his body. Chapter 6, Rules for Breathing. There is no particular time or place for breathing. Breathe wherever and whenever it is possible to breathe. If it is possible to have choice, it will be found advisable to select the early morning, immediately upon arising. Stand before an open window or a well-ventilated room. Exhale, exhale until there is no longer a possibility of any more breath escaping. This is to empty the lungs. There is no use attempting to inhale while the body is full of exhausted air. Exhale, 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 pressing the ribs inward, with the hands on the outside of the chest, giving at first short gasps of breath, then prolonging the gasp until the residual air in the lungs is exhausted to its fullest extent. Then take long, deep inhalations, filling the lungs to the uttermost. Repeat the exhalation exercise. Do this 5 or 6 times, then begin the inhalation of long, deep breaths, exhaling slowly. Inhale through the nostrils and exhale through the mouth. Repeat this exercise for 5 minutes, then inhale to the fullest extent again, then, holding the breath, breathe it out through the body, directing it up through the head, forward, backward. When it is exhausted, inhale it again, breathe it out through the body, the throat, the chest, the abdomen, the limbs, always backward and forward until the whole body has been breathed through. Then, taking one long, deep breath, hold it and force the breath downward through the body to the feet and upward to the center of the head. Send this current upward and downward rapidly and with power. Do this 5 or 6 times, then rest and repeat until a reaction is awakened. This breath awakens the electrical energy of the vital centers of the body, and after a while a lightning-like force will accompany it, rushing from head to feet like a flaming fire. This is self-electrification, and all the electrical force in the cells of the body is set loose by this burning breath. This energy flows through the body like a radiant current, absorbing and dissolving whatever is ready to be destroyed. This is the immortal breath of the Illuminati, the prana of the universe. It heals, recreates, inspires. This is the breath the universe breathed into the nostrils of the sleeping Adam, the breath Christ breathed upon his disciples when he said, "Receive ye the Holy Ghost." Man is not flesh, he is fire, and at his center burns the flame from whence he came. With his own breath he sweeps away like a devouring flame all that interferes with his own godliness. Just an empty chalice, the lungs, then the inbreathing of the breath of the Almighty that giveth life, then conscious control of this moving current of electricity in the flesh body and through the circulation, and our whole being becomes a bursting electrical display, more compelling than the radiant lightning flashes in a sullen sky. Then mortality has put on immortality, and in his flesh he has seen God. Chapter 7, The Immaculate Birth. It has not entered into the heart of man to conceive of the glory that is prepared for them who love the Lord, law. He who believes in the law comes into the protection of the law, and this protection gives him the possession of the things which belong to the law which he serves. When man has conceived in consciousness a new idea of truth, this conception becomes flesh of his flesh and bone of his bone. He is born of the spirit of higher revelation. This is the Immaculate Conception. This dawn of a new creation in the body is accompanied by extended states of consciousness. The extended mind first reached out to pioneer its flights into a new kingdom of mind, then it was obliged to return to lift its flesh to this new level. Mind and body are one, wings for the angels, and feet for men. We may borrow their wings to find the way, we may hope and resolve, aspire and pray, but our feet must rise, or we fall again. When man has once conceived the true understanding of spiritual conception, his next lesson is to learn to pass this through his material universe. His thought must become a word, and his word become form. When this is accomplished, he finds that he has new gifts, new privileges, new opportunities, not shared by the plotters around him. What are these gifts, and what are their uses? These gifts are first, extended states of vision, true clairvoyance, not the mixed colors of ordinary clairvoyance induced by controls or astral obsessions, but a vision so clear that the Akashic records can be read like the clean, white pages of a book, while the others themselves become his mystic mirror, and a glass of water a very sea of illumination. Before him, at his own will, he can spread out the whole panorama of the universe. Through the natural functions of the emanation body, he becomes a true Illuminati, and joined with the extended vision he has the mystic ear, which, listening, can hear above the din and surge of life the true message, and register the music of the spheres. With this vision and hearing he gains the mystic's touch of power. His presence heals. His hands carry healing and comfort in their clasp. His words gain a new meaning, they do not come back to him void. He can send them and heal either by telegram, phone, letter, or person. His emanation mind becomes a wireless station, where he lives in direct contact with the universal mind. He no longer needs to argue or explain, he knows. He can suspend his own thinking for a moment, and the race mind, collectively or individually, will think through his mind. Then by simply changing his switchboard the master mind of the upper ethers will speak their message to him. He has only to listen as one would listen to a voice on a phonograph telling a story. He has a law higher than thinking, he lives by the law of the impression message. In this immaculate birth he companions himself with the currents of angelic hosts, and has become an interpreting center, a solar god of his earthly universe. Does this new transcendental state of being separate him from the world of service to his kind? Not at all. It only makes him 1,000 times more useful, because, while he lives in a human world, he has the superhuman qualities unfolded. He has the emanation flesh body to work in, and this body knows no weariness. He can work forever where others, having only half the truth of life, grow discouraged. He, knowing all, seeing farther, goes on in joy and laughter. Where others find only a blind alley of endeavor, he sees through the wall of darkness to the better things ahead. He is out into a world of usefulness that is cosmic. His very wisdom draws the world to his side in entreaty. His very knowing falls like a benediction on the faltering, uncertain heart of the multitude. He heals, blesses, strengthens, prospers, and comforts the race, because he has found the kingdom of power in his own soul and born it into his material universe. This is the Word made flesh, the immaculate birth and its gifts. The world has a right to ask what will it receive, in exchange for this self-control, and higher selection on the human pathway, and those who have come over this pathway are glad to answer. All these gifts are the birthright of those who consciously take the transmutation pathway, and make their aim the accomplishment of the divine within themselves. There is no possibility of contradiction. These are the gifts of the kingdom of higher consciousness to those who enter it. And through the inspired power of the emanation body, the rising mind of man finds a springboard from which he can fling himself onward into wider and wider reaches of divine wisdom. Then, turning again to the earth world around him, he walks the human pathway, translating all his wisdom into human sweetness. Sane, sensible, still deeply tender, working lovingly and continuously for the advancement of the race. Is this not the Word made flesh? And is this not the true destiny of the grand man of the universe? The end.